Dear students, both offline and online, I'd like to very warmly welcome you at amazing event, which is a part of a European journey. Let's call it this way. We are here because of not only amazing speakers who will give a lecture about global integration, about the specific area of the global integration, which is energy sector. But we are part here of amazing project which is called European Union Week. Within the project, several top-tier amazing universities of Europe connect to create something what we call in science as a value network perspective. So as you know, right now the world is created the way that the real value comes from networks, not only from one sole player. That's why a few years ago, Professor Joachim approached us and asked if Kozminski would like to be within the network of amazing European universities to create some nice value for your students. So this year, thanking once again Professor Henkel for being with us physically on campus, because we know each other very well, but you know how it is right now, that everything, most things happen online. So this time we have an amazing opportunity to have Professor Henkel with us. So dear students, please give a big applause to Professor Henkel. In a moment, you'll have a speech of Professor Michał Kurtyka, who is, I can say it without using too much PR, I just say what I think and what I know. This is the biggest expert of climate change, of energy transition in Poland, simultaneously being our lecturer. And I'd like to thank you, Professor Kurtyka, for being with us today. Thank you. Please applause. For students who are with us online from several campuses of European Union Week initiative, I just want to mention that the place we are here today is Kozminski University, which is presumably, at least according to Financial Times, the best business school of Central and Eastern Europe. Triple Crown accredited with a huge international exposure in terms of research, in terms of students' body, and in terms, obviously, of our ambitions. So to keep things short, because introduction is always boring. I try my best not to be boring, but it's always boring. So I just want to keep it short. So once again, thank you for being with us today, and I just hope that, just like it was with me, the university I finished was amazing. I had a lot of great lecturers and great classes, but what really puts you forward is one or two speeches, one or two meetings with people who make a huge difference. And I just hope that for some of you, today's event and the other events during the week will give you this real lifetime inspiration, which will put forward your career and your mindset, especially focusing on the energy transition, on European Union integration, and on everything what is connected with stable, responsible development of human beings on the planet. So thank you very much, and I'd like to pass right now voice to Professor Joachim to give a couple of words to your dear students. Thank you.
Professor Mazurek, Professor Kurtyka, everyone here, dear all, dzień dobry, dziękuję bardzo za zaproszenie. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I'm honored to be able to speak here, say a few words, basically as an introduction, as a welcome to the actual speaker, and I'm really curious to hear about new energy for the new world. It's a very, very important topic. I realize students here are just like in Munich, so they fill the room from the back. because apparently professors are perceived as being dangerous. We are not. Quite the contrary. We usually enjoy interacting with students. So we have time at the end for Q&A. And I'm looking forward to that too. So, a few words about European Union Week. So this is me, professor at TUM for Technology and Innovation Management since about 20 years, Vice Dean of Research, and I love to be abroad. I spent sabbaticals in London, Boston, and Singapore. I have a mixed background, degree in physics, PhD in economics, then was a consultant. I also have a family. And with that background, then I became a management scholar. And so these are part of the reasons I'm here, of course, visiting a very important and reputable business school. That's great. Part of that is our collaboration for the European Union, and I'm a big fan of the EU. So why is that? And why are we doing this? Why are we organizing the European Union Week? And we is all these 8 universities you see here. You see the logos. There's Erasmus here, Estonian Business School. There's Bucharest, Polimi, Milano, HSC Paris, TUM, Kozminski. Why are we doing this? Well, there was a trigger. The trigger was Brexit. In 2016, I remember very lively, I was in Singapore, and then there came the news that the majority, well, small majority, had voted for the UK to leave the European Union. And I was both shocked and really sad because, well, of course you can decide what to do if you want to join a union and if you want to stay in it. It's just that, to a good extent, this decision was based on lies. So Boris Johnson, who then became Prime Minister later, he toured the country with his red bus promising of claiming that the UK would pay £350 million a week to the EU, and he would instead fund the NHS, the National Health Service, with it. That was complete nonsense. The number was far too high, and of course, UK gets a lot back for that. And of course, the money didn't go to the NHS later, which even Nigel Farage, another guy pro-Brexit, admitted a day later. And the second thing, and this is why it's so important that you are here, because you're young people. The young people voted mostly Remain. So here's statistics. In the youngest age group, 18 to 24, we had 73% voting for Remain. And these are the people who, well, they own the future because they will live longest to see the consequences of Brexit. So they were clearly very much for remaining part of the European Union. Not so for the elderly. Well, you could say, well, fair enough. Well, that's what they want. And the second thing here, however, is that the voter turnout was lowest for the young people, for whatever reason. Maybe they thought, well, I don't care, or maybe they thought, hey, it's going to be fine anyway, nobody's going to vote Brexit. Fact is, if voter turnout had been the same across the age groups, London would still be in Brussels, or the UK in the EU. But that wasn't the case. So then I thought, well, maybe we should at least inform our own students about the EU, because there's so many good things about it that we take for granted that we don't even think about anymore. And, well, on a positive note, there was a date when what happened? Anyone? Well, this is when Poland joined the EU, officially. So nearly, it's 20 years next week, Poland celebrates becoming officially part of the European Union. And of course, I'm aware that there's also a debate here. It's maybe some similarity to the Brexit debate. In any case, it's worth remembering that there are many good things about the European Union that work pretty well. There are also things that are being discussed, which is fair enough. That happens in every country. But we should not forget about all the positive things. And one of them is, well, we're stronger together. So let me give you two arguments, two very simple arguments for a strong EU. If we are, as national countries, if we are in competition, not even speaking about military stuff, hopefully that's not a topic, just economic competition with the US and China, all of our countries are pretty small. But the EU is not. The EU has weight. And you might remember, it's a while ago, but when Trump imposed tariffs on European steel, well, Brussels said, okay, fine. Here's the list of US goods that we put tariffs on. That's a reaction that you cannot do on a national level. Well, you can, but it's not very impressive. And you need to coordinate. So that's one strong argument. Another one is actually, and I understand, computers. Considering its next move, it seems. So, here we go. You don't even need to think about competition with other countries or regions. You need to think about cooperation. You're aware that with environmental protection, there is typically a public good problem. So if I pollute, I being a country or even a person, if I pollute, the benefit is for me because I, or whatever, do what I do by polluting. But the disadvantage, the CO2 and the other stuff is global. Certainly CO2, that's a global problem. It's not a local problem. So there are, you studied economics, there is a public good problem here. And one way to overcome it is to join forces, to have an agreement on something. And so the European Green Deal and similar things on the European level, they are very helpful, even important and necessary. We have an expert here on that. So Michał, I'm really looking forward to your talk. The EU helps. And now a quick look at history. The driving force of what it started, what happened at that date? Anyone? History? Well, I confess a few years ago I wouldn't have known either. So that was when this gentleman here, Robert Schuman, French, but he changed nationality in his life, I think, more than once. Not because he moved, it's because the border moved. And it's actually not funny because of the wars. But his goal after the war was reconciliation between Germany and France in particular, but more broadly across Europe. He made on this famous 9th of May 50, which was has been declared Europe Day, he made his famous declaration where he proposed a plan to pool markets for German and French coal and steel. Why coal and steel? Why not veggies and fish? Any idea? Yeah?
Well, to limit the production of arms.
Exactly. Thank you. Because for arms you need steel, for steel you need coal. So if you monitor the other countries' coal and steel production, you have an idea if they are up to something, if they are planning armament. And he also invited other countries to join. And so a total of 6 countries started what became the Montan Union, and that was the origin of the EU. He was also a devout Catholic. In fact, he was declared venerable by the Pope in 21, and he's on his way to canonization, meaning you can be a very devout Catholic and very pro-European. Before I stop, final word to you. You're hopefully aware of this date, early June. There are the elections for the European Parliament. Please vote so that not things as Brexit happen to you or us in Europe. With that, dziękuję bardzo. And I pass the mic to Michał Kurtyka.
Professor Henkel, thank you very, very much for your introduction. Thank you for bringing us in our European perspective, and which is extremely close to my heart, because that was in 1996 that I made my first professional choice, but by joining Polish public administration, and then Poland prepared for the process of joining European Union. I wonder how many of you would consider going to the public administration, which is not that much anymore a popular choice. So please raise your hand who is contemplating going to work in a ministry or in a public administration. Okay, we still have 2 of you. Excellent, thank you very much. So, with this being the scene sitter, I would like to thank you very much, Professor, for your introduction. And I think that the topic which has been chosen by the school for this introductory speech is extremely relevant. As you recalled us, that coal and steel were at the beginning of creation of the European Union. And right now, what I would like to share with you is that we are again at a turning point of history. And again, we as Europeans, we will have to make a choice. What will be our future? And on what energy do we want to build our house for the next 50, 60, 70 years or more? And let me put a little bit this in perspective. So let's start with the fact that we are right now living in a city. We are billions of humans. We can travel by plane. We can go by car. Our cities are big. All of this would not be possible without the discovery of fossil fuels and without industrial organization. In 1850, so more than 150 years ago, only 5% of global energy was coming from fossil fuels, at that time from coal. Because that was coal which started this industrial revolution. The coal helped to power steam engine, and then it allowed for industrial revolution. Then in the 19th century, the second half of the 19th century, we completed the coal with oil. And then the first globalization started. The second half of the 19th century is for the first time that we could travel very quickly from one place to the other, across Atlantic especially, that we could send a telegram. All this completely revolutionized the world. And it enabled also an unprecedented increase of human population. Do you know how many we were humans in 200 years ago? 1800. We are right now, how many? 8 billions, more or less. How many we were 200 years ago? 1 billion. How many of us were living in cities? More or less 80 million people. How many of us are living in cities right now? More or less 4 billion people are living in cities. So over the last 200 years, we as human species, we as Homo sapiens, we completely changed the way we lived for centuries. We were living in rural areas. Now we live in urban cities. We were not traveling that much. Now we are traveling a lot. We were living much less than we are living right now. In the beginning of the 20th century, the lifespan was about 40 years across the globe. Right now it's twice as much. All of this would not be possible without fossil fuels, without industrial organization, without globalization, which followed thanks to ships, cars, planes, industries, etc. But obviously, there is a problem. when we were living as in Paleolite and we were somehow cultivating our land, the only problem that we could have been creating, it was for our neighbors. We could have polluted a little bit 100 meters across the river. Right now, with the technologies that we have, we can pollute the entire planet in a very short lapse of time. That is a problem of greenhouse gases emissions. That is something that we became aware of only quite recently, in the beginning of 90s. Many of you were not yet born at the beginning of 90s, but still I was, and that was a big shock, that we understood that we can impact our planet in an extremely negative manner through emissions, that we can impact through products which are built out of petrochemical industry, for example, plastics. Right now, the amount of plastics which has been accumulated in the world is more or less 1 ton per inhabitant of the world. So each of you is as each of you somehow stocked 1 ton of plastic pollution somewhere in the world. And we have already plastic islands floating across Pacific Ocean. So we are entering into a world where we need to take something into account. We need to switch a little bit our behavior in order not to impact our planet and delicate equilibrium of our living system with our technologies. And that is the main topic of the Green Deal. That is the main topic of COP24, which I was responsible for in Katowice. But that is one driver which is driving our world. Environmental conscious, moral obligation to our planet to do better, to do differently. That's only one. In the meantime, there is another thing which is going on. And that's politics, even geopolitics, if I may say. Professor Henkel, you were very good in presenting Europe as squeezed between US and China. During last 30 years, the position of Europe completely switched, changed in the world. I recall I did once the experiment. Please, you can do it as well. The data is available. Try to see what are the biggest companies which were listed in the world in terms of capitalization in 2000. 7 out of 10 were of Atlantic Ocean origin, whether Americans or Europeans. If you do the same exercise now, 9 out of 10 have their headquarters on the side of the Pacific Ocean. The world completely flipped from Atlantic Ocean, center of gravity, to Pacific Ocean, center of gravity. And this is obviously linked with the spectacular rise of China. China represented in 1993% of global GDP. Now it represents 19 if we compare whether we compare the nominal or purchasing power parity. China is a giant. India is another giant. But people from Europe forget that there are 600 million people living in ASEAN countries, and this is also a growing giant in terms of economic growth in the world. So the world during the last 20 years shifted to Asia in terms of economic power, in terms of innovation, in terms of research, in terms of industry, in terms of demographic, in terms of young people. More and more of people in the world right now, when you compare youth, would be from Asia than from Europe or other continents. And then we have this geopolitics which turns nasty sometimes. And this is the world we are right now in. After the COVID crisis, after war in Ukraine, Gaza Strip, Gaza events, we enter into the end of globalization. Maybe some of you remember the work, the book of Francis Fukuyama, The End of History. Yes. Well, right now, most probably we are at the end of the history. The history started to move back again. And this puts us Europeans again ahead of extremely complicated challenges. How do we want to compete in this world? How do we want to fight for our democracy, for our sovereignty, for our rights? And the word fight is unluckily appropriate because we are sliding more and more to the words of conflicts, to the word of tensions, to the word of possible breakthroughs. And so that is a second force which is shaping completely our world. Luckily, there is a third one, technology. How many of you have a smartphone? That is a quiz which is aimed to wake you up a little bit, nothing more. I don't expect anybody not to have. Oh, by the way, that would be a useful way of asking the question, who is not having a smartphone? Who is not having a computer? Okay, and so you contributed to a technological revolution. You remember that 19th century was the century of coal. 20th century was the century of oil, and right now a little bit more also of gas. And the 21st century will be the technology linked with the dominant technological trend, which is electricity. The most important energy that will be consumed in the coming years in the world will be under the form of electricity. Obviously, we are comparing a little bit apple to carrots because you can produce electricity out of coal or gas or oil. But nevertheless, that's the way the history is going on. Right now, we are electrifying everything. Why? Because we are able to store cheaply electricity with lithium-ion batteries. You wouldn't have your iPhone if there was not an extremely advanced research and development of manufacturing capabilities in lithium-ion batteries. So we are right now entering into a world where we are not anymore dependent only on coal and oil. We can be dependent on electricity, and electricity can be produced in various other manners. And here we come to the situation of Europe. You remember I spoke about these global challenges that we are in, yes? So the wars, fragmentation, etc. And then when you see the European situation through the lenses of on the energy landscape, you can see that we are squeezed between two giants, US and China. And US has created a very advanced program of digging its own oil and gas. That's the shale revolution. On the other side of the Pacific Ocean, China developed absolutely amazing oversupply of manufacturing capabilities in new energy technologies, such as solar panels or electric vehicles, batteries, lithium-ion batteries. And so you have on one side of the Atlantic Ocean, US, which is producing its own oil, its own gas, and which could have helped Europe when we lacked gas last winters because of Russian aggression to Ukraine. And at the same time, China is manufacturing all the solar panels that we are using on our rooftops. So Europe is, again, a little bit squeezed between American LNG and Chinese solar panel, to be a little bit illustrative. And the question is, what will be our path to the future? How we will answer to the triple turning point of the history: environmental conscious, technological breakthrough, geopolitical fragmentation. How we as Europeans, we are going to be able to answer to this triple challenge with a reflection on energy. What kind of energy sources can bring us independence, sovereignty? How we can find our way between Chinese manufacturing and American gas and oil? This is the question which is probably to be asked for the European Week. This is the question that will probably, if we answer it rightly, will put again Europe on the edge of competitiveness. Otherwise, we might be sliding into losing competitiveness and into losing Europeans' leadership in the energy world. That's something I hope will not happen. But this is the challenge which is right now ahead of us in terms of the next European Commission and next European Parliament. Whether we will be able to build sovereign production and transport of electricity, whether we will be able to secure 24 hours supply of energy. And the challenge with renewable sources is that they are functioning only when the wind is blowing or the sun is shining. So we need to complement them with storage. And the most obvious way of storing electricity is through hydropowers. But hydropowers are limited. You have them in Norway, in Austria, but you don't have them in Poland. So we have a challenge here. So another way of securing 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year electricity flow is through nuclear energy. But this is also bringing a lot of controversy inside the European Union. We are not sure that some of our members are really willing to develop, some are willing, some are not. So we have again this challenge of European leadership and European unity. And obviously we have new sources, geothermal energy, extremely interesting. Dry geothermy, very promising. You have hydrogen. We have different forms of storing energy, not only electricity, but also heat or cold. So we are entering definitely into a world of new possibilities for energy. And in this world of new possibilities of energy, we as Europeans, we will have to tackle with environmental issues, geopolitical concerns, and re-asking us the question regarding technological edge that we want to bring. That is something that I leave you with. I hope we will find answers, that you will find answers, and that European Week that you, Professor Henkel, initiated, and we as Kozminski University, we are proud to take part in, will be also bringing an answer to this triple dilemma ahead of Europe. Thank you.